And welcome to Houston Newsmakers EXTRA. We've been talking with Dr. Tom Kolditz, who is the director of the Door Institute for New Leaders at Rice University. Let's continue and pick up where we left off. What do you think the biggest challenge is for President Biden as he takes over, tries to lead a nation that is so seriously divided? What do you think his biggest challenge is going to be, and how successful is he likely to be?
Well, I believe that his biggest challenge is going to be staying clear of the conspiracies and the things that surround them, and focusing instead on saving both Republican and Democratic lives by the way he handles the pandemic. We've got to get COVID under control, both for health reasons and our economy, and then the greater healthcare system. Those would be two huge contributions he could do early on that direct away from all the talk about the election. He can't get involved in any of that because it's not an objective concern. And you can't rationalize or deal logically with people who are not objective.
In the same time, as he takes office, there's going to be an impeachment process going on. So it's going to be a challenge for him to stay focused on just the policy and getting the nation going while the impeachment process is still going on, with President Trump still in the news as all of that is happening. That doesn't make it any easier, does it?
No, it really doesn't. But I think President Biden in office will get the visibility he needs to communicate with the American people. They may also be distracted by the sideshow, but it's important that President Biden not get involved with Congress's impeachment, that he not get involved with Department of Justice indictments of leaders who inspired this. He needs to be above that and let those institutes and agencies do their own thing.
You know, one of the things that came out of, we've known each other for a little while, and we talked earlier this week, and I'm glad to know that we occupy the same space, and we're both hardcore independents, equally willing to tick off the right and the left. So that's a good thing. Question about this, as far as all of the stuff that's going on, the whole Stop the Steal process, all of that's going on, it's still resonating among some people in the base. Could President Trump or any of the folks who are elected representatives who represent the Republican Party, if they came out and just said, you know what, we lost the election, it was fair and square, couldn't that end a lot of this, or would it still just take a long time to resonate with folk?
I think it would still take a long time, because for these people to hear this, when 70 million of them have basically been convinced, won't fit with their reality. They're in a different reality. And so I think they're likely to say, well, you know, the deep state made him say that. Or they're going to say that really wasn't him. That was, you know, an avatar or something. I mean, it would probably help people that are closer to the middle. But for the true believers, I don't think it'll help.
You know, the president very early on identified the media as the enemy of the people. I think you've seen somewhere along your studies that other countries, leaders did the same thing with an effort to try to diminish any information that people got from the media. What role do you think the media has played in all of this? And what are your suggestions about some solutions that we might be able to use in terms of, I mean, if you can use your magic wand to kind of reshape the media a bit, what would you suggest happen so that we don't run into this sort of thing again?
Well, if you think back to the last, small cult that you saw, one of the characteristics of controlling people with conspiracy theories is removing sources of objectivity. And journalists are a very important source of objectivity. So are scientists. I mean, I was talking to a well-known lawyer about how science would uncover how badly we've done with the pandemic response. And his response was, we'll find our own scientists. And so it's very important to people that are trying to push conspiracy theories that there aren't any sources of objectivity. You know, when people go off into small cults, their family is isolated from them. outside people are isolated because they're on a compound. Well, in a national sense, Donald Trump has taken away sources of objectivity. He said the journalists are the enemy. He's made fun of scientists. He's removed experts from most of the positions in the government that they formerly occupied. It's very systematic. And it's happened again and again in history where the intelligentsia has been attacked. So it's very important that journalism restore itself as a sense of objectivity or a source of objectivity. I think means separating the talking heads from real journalists and real reporters, and making clear when there's an entertainment or opinion show and when there's true journalism, which is supposed to be truthful and have integrity behind it.
I think at this point, I feel like I want to make a point to let anybody who's watching our fabulous conversation here that we're not insinuating that the Republican Party is a cult. We're just talking about the fact that some of the ways people have been persuaded in a direction that is, because I saw the morning consult indicated that there were 22% of Republicans think that the election was fair and square. That's a scary number. If only 22% of people still believe that even now, that's a challenge going forward. Are you optimistic? What do you think about going forward? How well we're going to be able to come out of this? You've indicated it's going to take a while to make the turn toward reality, but how optimistic are you for us as a country going forward?
Well, in optimism, I think once we work hard to restore respect for sources of objectivity, that we will evolve back to a much more balanced society. And trust me, I don't think the Republican Party is a cult or what have you, but the communication tactics have been pretty much the same. So I think we have to be very protective of ourselves. There will be true believers who will be railing about this stolen election 50 years from now. And this will represent a continuing danger in the United States, both to individuals and processes in our government. But I think that once the sources of objectivity are restored, we will evolve in the right direction. We just have to be very careful that we don't get really hurt in the process.
We've seen some, final question here for you. We've seen some stories where some of the folk who were part of the Capitol Police and some other people who were there on the grounds might have been complicit in some way, shape, or form. As a retired general, how concerned are you about this kind of mentality happening within the armed forces that are sworn to preserve and protect?
Well, I've had some concerns. Remember, when you're talking about members of the armed forces, you're talking about people who have sworn an oath to support and defend the Constitution. And these people have keys to arms rooms with hundreds of machine guns in them. They have access to armed aircraft. They have access to explosives from time to time. So there has to be no question about their loyalty to the Constitution and their oath. And for people who thought that the attack on the Capitol was a good idea, if they're in the military, my position is they should be managed out in some way, either through the normal performance appraisal process or some other means. But to let someone who is embracing the overthrow of the government or the undercutting of democratic processes, the military and police agencies are not the place for these people.
Dr. Kolditz, fascinating conversation. I'd love to do an hour, but we need to get some commercial sponsorship to make that happen. So we won't do that. We'll let that go for now. Thank you so much. You have to come back and let's talk about your Leadership Institute and what you're doing and how it's preparing people going forward, because it's obviously something that we are sorely in need of right now is a solid leadership within this country. So I look forward to having that conversation with you soon, okay?
Great.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate it. Hey, anybody, you can share this Houston Newsmakers Extra with anyone you know. Thank you.